an organizational psychologist work with businesses, with workplaces, with people in organizations. So what we focus on is making sure that people are working to their best potential and that there is efficiency around the workplace.
Welcome to the Human Side of Business podcast with me, Louisa Meehan. We're exploring real stories from the trenches of people management. Each episode explores the situations business leaders have actually faced, the wins that surprised them, the failures that told them, the funny moments that kept them sane, and the challenging times that tested their resolve. We dig into what worked, what spectacularly didn't work, and the lessons learned along the way. This is about the messy, unpredictable, rewarding reality of managing humans, not the sanitized version you read about in business books. Today, I'm delighted to have Farzana Maudarbaccus, and forgive me if I got the name wrong, who is a chartered work and organisational psychologist specialising in leadership development, workplace wellbeing, and evidence-based assessment. She helps organizations build high-performing, human-centered cultures by supporting leaders to strengthen self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and resilience. Farzana delivers psychometric assessments, competency frameworks, assessment centers, and executive coaching programs that enhance performance, improve communication, and support better people decisions. Her work combines organizational psychology and practical experience to help leaders bring more authenticity and create healthier and more engaged teams. Originally from Mauritius and based in Ireland in the lovely County Wicklow, Farzana is also a recent TEDx speaker known for her insights on resilience and adaptability. Her calm, compassionate style enables clients to gain clarity, build confidence, and make meaningful, lasting change. Welcome, Farzana.
Thank you very much. Thanks for this lovely introduction.
Very impressive. And lots of different things that we can talk to there and discuss. I think it's really important because I know what organizational psychology is, and it's a term that's used by professionals in HR, by organizational psychologists. But it can be confusing sometimes to people who are in business. So could you just explain what the field is?
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much, Louisa, for having me. So an organizational psychologist, is definitely often confused. I often get asked, what health area do I work in? Well, an organizational psychologist work with businesses, with workplaces, with people in organizations. So what we focus on is making sure that people are working to their best potential and that there is efficiency around the workplace. So we focus on things like recruiting people with the best competencies for a role, in learning and development, around well-being in organizations, all this to make sure that people, so employees, leaders, are happy with the work that they do and they thrive. And in that way, they're able to achieve the organizational goals, metrics that are expected of them.
I think it's so important. And, for a large portion of my early career, I would have been quite fearful of saying that it was important to be happy at work because it was seen as secondary to getting the work done and sort of less important and a bit, maybe even sometimes like a bit girly and a bit sort of frivolous. And actually, the research tells us that being happy at work has a massive impact on productivity. Do you want to maybe just explore that in a little bit more detail?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know, I'm sure you know as well, people who work a typical work week, so Monday to Friday, and on Sunday evenings would get the dread, the pit in there, the feeling in their tummy about, it's Monday tomorrow and I have to go into work. So that I feel that this feeling tells us a lot about the type of environment or, the type of relationships that people have in work for them to feel like this I don't know, this feeling. I don't know what word to put on it. But being happy at work means that it is a workplace that brings the best, is able to bring the best out of you, is able to help and make you grow, and where you're happy to put in your energy, to put in your best. I know we get paid in return for what we're doing, but we want people, so employees, leaders, so everyone across the organization, to feel comfortable, to feel like they are, I feel, engaged in what they're doing, and that in return they are valued for what they bring. So for me, happiness encompasses all of these elements. It's not
Yes.
only, being happy in the sense of, if you think of it in being happy in your life, for me is a bit different, but I would qualify those, the happiness at work, with the elements that I just spoke about.
Yeah, and it's that sort of sense of, one of the key things that you mentioned there is that sense of connection to the people that you're working with. So that community and feeling that you have a purpose. So that sense of, why am I doing this? Like, why does it matter? That connection with the ultimate customer is quite key. So, some of the research would say that where people are happy at work, they can be 30% more productive. They are better at making decisions. They are better. Their performance is better. There's less conflict. There's less attendance issues. So there's actually hard metrics around happiness at work, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
What do you think for business leaders out there and HR professionals? What do you think are just 2 or 3 key things that an organizational can do, not necessarily to make people happy, because I'm not sure that they can do that, but to allow them to have a space where they could be happy?
Yeah, the first thing I would think about is what you just referred to a few seconds ago, is the connection part. So I feel that if we had more connections, so human beings connecting with another human being, that would be the first thing. Because when we think of organizations, many people would have told me, oh, I'm just a number, and, this has so much meaning in a not so positive way, in the sense that they don't feel valued. They don't feel that they're being someone in that workplace, because they feel they're a number, so they could be replaced. So I feel so connection, so really knowing the people that you work with, and then understanding that these people have feelings. So it's all around emotional intelligence. So either from leaders for their teams, or even, more horizontally for teams amongst themselves. So I feel that nurturing relationships for times when, things get, when we're in crisis situations, then the relationship is already there. It's not when suddenly that we're under pressure, we've to achieve a goal in a tight deadline, that we're suddenly trying to get people, to bring people along. It has to have been built over time. And then the last thing would be to really about minding the people. If I pick 3 things, this would be an important one, in terms of, it's not only about ticking a box and saying that you've done a wellbeing day, I don't know, twice a year or something. It's about thinking over the longer term. What are you doing? What do you have in place to make sure that you're minding your employees, the people who work with you and for you over time?
Yes. I think, from a HR perspective, one of the things that I would say to people managers, 2 elements of the same point, is make sure you take the time to notice your employees, what's going on, because their behaviors will tell you an awful lot. And secondly, this is really simple, but it's missed. Ask them how they are and listen to the answer. Because it comes back to that need for connection, well-being, etc. If we know what's going on, maybe we can't fix it. Maybe it's got nothing to do at work, and there's nothing we can do to fix it. But if we allow someone to feel support, then they might be able to fix it themselves.
Yeah, yeah. And even just like you said, that work is not really able to fix anything, that is going on in the personal life of a person, of an employee. But even the fact that someone cares to us, someone is paying attention to something that is going on outside of your work means so much, and can help you be more focused in work. And I also always say, we spend so much time in work, that we really need this place to be a thriving place, because then it's the organization, it's the business that benefits from that.
Absolutely. And I think, linking back to what you were saying about organizational psychology, then one of the key steps for an organization to take is to make sure that they hire the right people in the first place.
Yeah.
And this is where psychometric testing can be one of the tools that's used on that
Mm-hmm.
journey. Not for every role, it's not appropriate for every role, but certainly for some of the key positions and key roles. So do you want to just talk through how that can be incorporated into the recruitment process?
Yeah, well, that's something I've been doing from day one as an organizational psychologist. So, one of my first roles was as a recruiter in a bank. So, yeah, I feel it provides us recruiters, or talent managers, with a platform, something, scientific, that has been researched, that has been validated, for us to base our decisions on. I don't think it's a standalone tool that we use in recruitment, because I always say that once you have a profile, I feel that having the context for a particular candidate, for the role, for the culture of the organization, is so important, because otherwise it's just a profile. So I feel it gives us insight into a person, but with the addition of what's going on for that person, the role, the context, and all that.
Yeah, so you sort of look at the big picture, you still do your interviews, you still have your
Yeah.
conversations, make
Yes.
sure that you get on with the person. They might have the perfect
Exactly.
profile,
Yeah.
but there might be
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
connection.
Yeah.
But they have the skills, the hard skills, whatever that is for the job. And then this is sort of an additional piece of information, but
Yeah.
couldn't be taken in isolation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also always say, when you're recruiting for your team, if you're a leader, if you already have a team in place, you're thinking, how could this person also, you need some, like, the basic competencies and skills, but also could you recruit someone who has skills that would complement your own team?
Yes.
You're not trying to recruit everybody with the same set of skills, so this could be a good way of getting an insight into what a person prefers doing, or doesn't prefer to do.
And I think that actually ties really nicely in with the sort of second part of our chat around this before we come to your TEDx talks, which is super important. In preparation for today, we took some time for me to do a profile with yourself, a psychometric test, and personally, I found it to be very insightful and valuable, because when you're running your own business and you're sort of out in the world for a long time, it's important to take a step back and say, well, do the skills that I have, or the skills that are they aligning with where I'm driving my business? Because it's easier to lean into the areas that you find are your strengths, rather than trying to push yourself through areas that are more difficult. And that certainly came up there. Whilst I shone everywhere, of course, some areas were stronger than others. So, I think that would be the same for everybody that you're doing. I'm hoping that their skill profile and their testing sort of should provide a variety of different answers. You don't want somebody straight down the middle with everything, because that's not reality. There should be a flavor to it and an ebb and flow. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is what makes us humans, because so these assessments, usually you would think of them, if you look at a particular domain, you would think of them as So this is getting a bit technical now, as a normal distribution. So for example, if we think of human's height, most people would be average height, but some people would be really tall and some people would be more on the shorter side. So this would be what we would describe as a normal distribution. So in the same way, if we took a particular domain on a personality assessment, a psychometric assessment, we're looking at where a person is for that particular domain. Are they more in the middle? Are they doing this more or less than a comparison group? So we always compare what comes out of assessments to a comparison group. Yeah. So, no, absolutely. I never expect to see people more in the middle, because then that would be a flag for me. I would think, so many assessments have built-in, let's say, measures, what of a better word, to try and see, the consistency and to what extent a person is being, spontaneous in how he or she is describing his or her preference at work. And the reason why we use assessment is that the research has shown that while it is a self-description, of what a person feels he or she is like, it is a good predictor of workplace performance. That's why we use these assessments.
Well, I certainly found I think like any normal person, at the beginning, you try to sort of think about it carefully. But as I was using the tool, I was like, I'll just answer the questions. So anyway, let's dive into some of the answers.
Yeah.
So for you, this is divided into 4 sections. So we'll take each and you can give me a highlight from each to share. And you feel free to share whatever you wish. So the first is around solving problems. So do you want to maybe just talk through what that's about at a high level, and then maybe something that stood out for you from my assessment?
Yeah, so this assessment is divided into around four main areas. So they're all work-related domains. So just broadly to introduce it, it's around how a person thinks, then how a person interacts, how a person adapts, and then delivers at work. So the first one, as you said, it's about solving problems and how you think. And here in some of the areas, so you described yourself. So I would always, when I'm giving a feedback, I would always mention to that person that it is their own description of themselves. And then I chat with them around whether this feels aligned with how they see themselves and how that would play out at work. So if we look at your area, your thinking style in the workplace. So in your case, Louisa, we were looking at comparison group. So for your case, we were looking at professionals and managers. And if we look at the thought area, we look at how you analyze problems, what is your preference for learning, and also how you deal with concepts and strategy. So in general, I would say, if I look at your profile, without giving too much away, that you are definitely practically minded. You also describe yourself as someone who's quite innovative in the way they come up with solutions and ideas, and also very comfortable in going into the logic behind the information that you have to work with. So I would then ask you, I know we've chatted about this, but I would ask then a person how this description resonate with themselves, and check in with how these domains would play out at work for them, and then in their interactions with others.
Yeah, look, I think for sure it definitely resonated with me. And even the tagline for on my business card that I did 10 years ago and still use is practical solutions to people problems. Because, you can get lost in HR in sort of two extremes. One which is over focused on process, procedure, legality, which can be too severely sort of right and wrong, or black and white, a bit too rigid. Or you can go down the rabbit hole of being, compassionate to the extreme and always putting the employee first and not looking at what the business needs. Now, I'm not sure that anybody really fits into either of the extremes, but people are on that spectrum somewhere. And for me, certainly a learned skill has been to try and find innovative, practical solutions to issues that are coming up. Things that work for the person, that are respectful and kind and compassionate, but that work for the business too. Because you have to do as much as you can. You have to try and hold both of those in equal measure. And that can be tricky. So it does resonate for sure. I do think, and I think I said this to you when we were chatting, had I taken this assessment 15, 20 years ago, I think I'd have got different answers. So I think some of what's coming through are things that I've learned through experience, which is quite interesting for me.
Yeah. And the result of an assessment also would be, we'd say, would be valid, would be a fair reflection of a person, and could be used for between 12 to 24 months. Because like you said, life experiences and different life stages mean, we react differently, we would see ourselves differently, our priorities change. So all this would impact how we feel, we behave at work.
Yes, I think that's really resonates. And I'm going to come back to that point when we finish doing this element of the test. The next section, which, given what I do for a living, thankfully I didn't fail miserably at this. It was around influencing people, which is a key thing that I do. So you might just talk through that.
Yeah. So I feel when people do assessments, they're always thinking, like, I have to get it right. So I should have said that right from the start. I always say that, and any colleague of mine would say that there's no right or wrong answer, right or wrong way, of being portrayed. It really does depend on the role, the context of the organization, because what I might be looking for one role in one particular candidate might be completely different. So I know, and I think when I do assessments as well, which does happen, I always feel like, oh, am I getting this right? I think that's probably really human, but I really want to say this, that it is. I think it is important we remember that for one particular role, we're looking for some types of behaviors, what motivates a certain candidate, but there's no right or wrong per se. So influence, to come back to, so that's the second part of the assessment. So it's how you relate to others and how you persuade, interact, lead, challenge, build relationships. So definitely an area where you are doing this to a much larger extent in many areas than more people in the comparison group. So what this means then is it's an area that energizes you. So being with people, communicating, having to persuade, you don't feel like this, you need a lot of energy to do that. It comes very naturally. So it's great to then, when you match this with what you do for a living, like you said earlier, and it is something that you can do eyes closed.
Yeah, look, it's actually an area, the more I do it, the more I love it. And I'll give you an actual example. So one of the things that I do, luckily it's sort of occasional, but it's impactful when it happens, is around collective redundancies. So if an organization is letting go a number of different people, see what's going in, there might be an organizational restructure, and there's a lot of people going, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
And one of my core jobs at the outset, it changes as you go through the process, but at the beginning, is almost to become a translator. So I take the information from the business in relation
Yeah.
to what's happening, what they need to do, what their plans
Mm.
are.
Mhm.
And I mean, I don't translate it from one language to another, but I take it from the language of strategic business making
Yeah.
business managers and
Mm.
transform it into language and a communication that employees can relate to when it's having a direct impact potentially on whether they have a job at that company or not. So it's a really difficult message to get across in a supportful way. It's
Yeah.
never an easy conversation. It's never pleasant. It is always challenging, but there is
Mhm.
definitely a skill from going from complex business decisions, rationales into a much more human conversation with people about how those decisions are impacting on my life. You know, for each person, they're not
Yeah.
interested in the business with the
Yeah.
greatest of respect. It's
Mm.
what's the impact for me, the human
Yeah.
being,
Yeah.
and then what's going on with the business, because they do care, but they care about themselves first, as they should, as I would also do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that is really critical because there are times when I'm communicating with people at some of, from a professional perspective, and some of the most difficult conversations that they will have. And it doesn't help them if I fall apart. So I
Mhm.
have to maintain a degree of professional calm, no matter what's going on
Yeah.
the inside. It's not
Yeah.
always on the inside,
Yeah.
but it is really important. So I think that's sort of, it aligns, it resonates with me very strongly.
Yeah, so I feel that, yeah, you definitely are in an area where you're comfortable in like articulating things for people and you're trying to convey this and also at different levels. So you're taking it from um, probably senior leadership and then going to employees and like you said, translating this. And this brings us nicely to the third part of the assessment, which is about responding to change, dealing with pressure, and also the more supportive part. So you already have described this with this example about your resilience, your ability to be really empathetic to people, because this is something, collective redundancy is something that impacts people's lives to such an extent. And so you really see yourself as someone who is supportive, but also receptive to what others are telling you. And something that also stood out was your ability to stay composed. You described yourself as being able to stay composed with people who are upset, are angry. And these are emotions that you probably would, I'm guessing, deal with when you're working with clients around
Yeah.
collective redundancies, for example.
No, for sure. I mean, what I will say just to anybody out there, like it's not perfect.
Yeah.
If I'm in a situation where the conflict involves me,
Mm,
I find it or
mm,
my children or my family, my composure level reduces for
yeah,
sure,
yeah.
just like anybody else.
Totally
But
can relate.
help, exactly. And I think that's completely normal. But when
Mm,
it's professional, then I see that as my responsibility to allow, if somebody else is being impacted, they should be allowed a safe space to not have to be composed, not be worried about my reaction.
yeah.
So that is the job. Um, but I think another point, which was a slightly lower point, was around adjusting to change, and that came out as something that I struggle with a little bit more. And I know for sure and that's possibly coming more from my personal life than my professional, but it is something I find really hard. Like for a
Mm,
really simple example, if I go out and paint a room or buy a new piece of furniture that I really want and I've put loads of time into,
mhm.
normally once it's in the house, it takes me like 2 to 3 weeks. And I'm like, okay, I like it now. And I know I want it and I do like it, but
Yeah, yeah,
I don't love the change. I don't love it. And I'm fine with it and I will do it happily, but I
mm,
don't, that process, yeah, it's not
yeah,
my favorite thing in the world. And that
yeah,
came out.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, that was something around this area of adaptability. that came out for you. So do that, an area that you're doing less of than most people in the comparison group. And just something I wanted to say around using assessments, so used in recruitment, but used also for development purposes. So a big part of my role is working with senior leaders and emerging leaders around the self-awareness. So knowing what they're good at, so what energizes them, what they can do eyes closed, but also, like you said, the change for you, it's change. So what are the things that don't come naturally to them, that stretches them, and also some blind spots that we all have, but that the assessments help to bring forward and give us a platform to have a chat about. So knowing all of that for developmental purposes, I feel is also quite useful.
Actually, that leads very neatly into delivering results, which was I mean, look, I'm sort of down the middle. I'm around average. It's fine. So this is around the sort of structural piece. But what you're saying there, this really resonated with me because over the last year, I'm strengthening my team and I've taken in somebody to help me with business operations. And you can explain why I need that. And the results.
Yeah, so this part of the assessment would look at how someone plan their work, how they follow through on tasks, managing time, managing standards. So it's an area, so it's a mixed area from your description of yourself. So organized, so as much as most people, in the comparison group, behaves ethically. So that's one of the things we look at. You're doing that more than most professionals and managers. But then if we look at reliability, that's an area where you're doing less of. You feel that you're doing less of than most people. So here we're thinking about what do you have in place to achieve deadlines? To what extent does that energize you? Or is it something that you need support with or you need more time with? So that's the thing. When there is something that comes naturally to you, you do this and it comes easily to you. But it doesn't mean for the opposite that you're not able for it. What it means is you need more time, more resources, and it takes a lot out of you. And you're likely to need more recovery time if you do something that doesn't come naturally to you.
Yeah, and it really just resonates. And again, it's not that I'm not reliable, it's that I have to balance my priorities. Yeah. So if I'm doing a task for a client or for my work that is administrative or that's not crucial today, like for example, really simple one, creating a batch of policies, procedures, handbooks. Takes a good while to do it.
Yeah.
But whether they get it today or next week really makes no difference. They might want it today. We might have agreed today. And so, that's the right thing to do running a business. Yeah. But behind the scenes, if a client rings me up and they're in crisis, something has gone wrong, there's a massive issue with an employee, maybe somebody has to be placed on suspension, whatever it might be, then that will take my attention because it's more important in the moment, not over the course of a sort of a long period, but in the moment. And so I have to balance the firefighting aspect of dealing with, human beings have problems when they have problems, not to my schedule. So dealing with them as they come up. But as I said, one of the things that I've done over the last year is put in place supports within the business so that, because I am organized, and so that those things are delivered on time, it just doesn't rely on me to deliver every aspect of them.
Yeah.
Because I can't do it all. Yeah. And I think a lot of people have to come to that realization at some point that you can't do it all. It's too hard.
No, and as a business owner, I can so relate with that. There are things that I can do eyes closed, and there are things that require a lot of energy. And like you, I have resources, people who help me outside my business because, some of my expertise, I know where my expertise are, and, I have to give whatever I find more challenging and what stretches me to other experts.
Yes, I think it's really, really crucial. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know that you were a little anxious, but I'm very happy to be open. So I'm delighted that you did that. And anybody who'd like some more information on my assessment, feel free to let me know, and I will share more details. That leads us neatly into the last thing that I wanted to talk to you about, and this is an area that you touch on, and actually don't touch on. You discuss in great detail in your TEDx, which is around neuroplasticity. And it's something that the more I learn about it, the more it resonates with me, the more I really believe in it. But what you did, which was different to a lot of people in your field, is you took what is quite a complex transition, like changing the plasticity. So it's about changing the way that your brain works, the sort of hardware, how it's actually operating, and you can actually change the gray matter. But you broke it down rather than it being a really big, complicated thing that you have to do to go and do that, to something super simple. So do you want to talk about that in more detail?
Yeah, so thanks again for talking about the TEDx. It's something that's quite recent, so I could talk for hours on it as well. The analogy that I used to describe neuroplasticity is, so the way our brain works is there are routes that we can take, but by doing something, another action, we can overwrite a route or we can create a new route. So the analogy I use is when we go into a forest, we could use the main trail. So there's always a path that we can use, but we could also go off the beaten tracks. So use a trail that's not quite a trail. You can see that it's just about there. You can make out where it goes. But if we keep walking this other path, if there's more steps on it, then it becomes a path of its own. So that's exactly what happens in the brain. So there is a main route. There's another route that's, the way I see it is, it's not the prints are not solid. But then the more we do another action that is new to us. So let's say we're trying to build a habit, the more we do it. So I did that for, let's say, starting to meditate. I was working with a business mentor, and she said, it would be good as a business owner to have time for you to think. Mm-hmm. I think life nowadays is go, 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 go. There's so much you could be doing, the minute you wake up. So I started slowly. So I was meditating, but it was once in a blue moon, it wasn't a habit. So I started, and the way my brain would have done that would have been starting to meditate. It's a faint path. But now every day when I wake up, unless there is, I don't know, we're going for a flight at 3 a.m. and we have to leave at 3 a.m. I usually sit down, I have my spot where I meditate. This is the first thing I would do, sit down. And the more I've done this, it's probably a year and a half in now. So the more I've done this path in my brain, this route in my brain has become more solid. And now I'm sure if we are able to go in it, you would see that it is a route that is there, and it's a path that I use all the time.
I think that's amazing, because meditation is something that, like, I passionately believe in, and there is so much scientific research behind the benefits of meditation. Like, it's unquestionably good for you.
Yeah.
And yet, even though I know that, and even though I have done meditation, and like you, probably a year and a half ago, I do it fairly regularly, but it's very dipping in and out of it.
Yeah.
And I find, because of that, I find it really hard to be in a quiet space and to quieten down my thinking. I find that a really hard thing to do.
Yeah.
But I think what you're saying is the pattern of doing it every single day is what strengthens your ability to do that. So have you found it easier now to do than you did at the beginning?
So I find it easier to actually go sit and start it. I don't think I've mastered, it depends on what's going on in my life, to be able to really bring the thoughts back, So yeah, this really depends on what's going on in my head. Some days, let's say before the TEDx, for example, I was pretty much, having to blink my eyes open and say, okay, come back, okay. Or, sometimes I use a spray, a calm spray, a room spray, and this really brings me, I use another sense, to bring myself back rather than
Yeah.
being in my head. So yeah, no, I think, yeah, I don't think I've mastered it yet. And when I say I meditate, I'm a parent. There's loads going on around me. I don't sit for an hour. I sit for 10 minutes. For me, this is what suits my my schedule. Um, I'm happy with that. This works for me.
10 minutes seems
So
good to me. I'd be okay with 10 minutes a day.
yeah,
That's
no,
not bad.
just to make sure the viewers, the listeners don't think don't get the wrong picture, because I feel that's loads for me, so maybe I will be able to build it up, but for the moment, yeah.
One of the things that stood out to me in listening to your talk is the importance of those, and you may not have been able to do this on the day of the talk for obvious reasons, but where you do need to quieten down your mind, sometimes it's about you're not able to do that. There's stuff going on, it's not possible. But what you can do is put your physical body in a situation where your mind switches off. So do you
Yeah,
want to touch
yeah.
on what you've been getting up to do that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I'm from Mauritius originally, and when I moved to where I live now, I'm very lucky to live in a coastal town, so the sea is not far. But I was intrigued by people who were going in the sea. So you can imagine the Irish Sea. It's quite cold, so very different to the sea I grew up with, but somehow I got tempted to get in. So I now swim in the Irish Sea like regularly. So irrespective of the seasons. So in summer, in winter, it has to be safe. It has to be calm-ish. But I do get in the cold sea, and what it does, it really brings me out of my mind. So I feel,
That's for
it's
sure.
so cold. It's so cold that I can think of nothing else. I say that. That's exactly what I say in the TEDx. That there is nothing that brings more in the moment than when I actually am, when I hit the cold water. I often go with other people, because especially in winter, for safety, it's good
Yeah.
to go with others, and also for the crack. So I often find we could be chatting, but the minute I get in, my brain just goes, I don't even know, I can't really continue the sentence or continue a conversation. I just go, sorry, have to, I just have to kind of understand what's happening. I feel the cold, feeling what's going on in my body, and I feel it's really a good exercise. So there are different ways to meditate, and this is definitely one for me.
Yeah, and I think it's so important. We'll have to get you over to the Atlantic. If you think that the Irish Sea is cold, we'll chuck you into the Atlantic and see what you think over the other side of the country.
Well, I did that before
Did you?
sorry, after the TED. Yeah, I went for a dip in Kerry. So
Fantastic. Nice and warm.
yeah, nice and warm. So different. How could two sides of the same island be so different?
Yeah. Yeah, I have to coming from the northwest. I will always have a place in my heart for the Atlantic. It is
Oh,
spectacular.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I just I'm trying to tick several beaches, around the country.
Yes.
So
Well, there we go. Listen, thank you so much. I have borrowed a tradition from the Diary of a CEO where each guest leaves a question for the next, not knowing who they're leaving it for. So your question is, what is a standout moment in your career that stood to you the most?
what's a standout moment of my career which stood with me the most?
Yeah, that stood to you the most. What's been the most impactful moment that stood with you?
Well, the moment you said this, I thought about, so I'm from Mauritius, and when I moved to Ireland, I needed someone to be a sponsor because Mauritius is not part of Europe. That's technical details, So I needed to get a work permit. And when I arrived here with my passport, I couldn't get a work permit because it someone from Ireland or Europe. So you had to prove that no one from Ireland or Europe has this set of skills. So I was third on the list, and I could, then apply for a role. Well, I could apply, but a sponsor, an employer would have to sponsor and make sure that they comply with this. So eventually, I was able. There were roles, but I found a role in a management consulting firm, and I'm so grateful for my employer for applying for the work permit, and that opened so many doors. And when I left that role, because I was going on a career break, I gave my boss who had hired me. So he was the owner of that management consulting firm. Gave him a frame to say best boss ever. So he's been just instrumental in helping me spread my wings, learn, and I owe so much to him. And being a business owner today, I also feel that there's so much I learned because it was a small management consulting firm. So there was a lot of learning and also insights into how to run business. I'm sure only partly because he was doing a lot of that. But yeah, so that's the meeting my boss.
What a beautiful insight. Thank you so much, Farzana, for joining me today. I have really enjoyed our conversation, and I'm sure our listeners will too.
Thank you so much for having me, Louisa. It was really enjoyable, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to talk about what I do. Thank you.
Thank you.